Welcome to the Philosophy Zone, where we wrestle with the big ideas that have shaped how we understand the world. Today's episode, titled The One and the Many, dives into a timeless philosophical puzzle. How can reality be both a unified whole and a collection of diverse things? We'll focus on Parmenides and Melissus, the Eleatic thinkers, who argued for a radical unity called the One, and explore how their ideas rippled through the political, religious, and cultural currents of ancient Greece, medieval theology, and modern metaphysics. So settle in, maybe grab a notebook, and let's journey into this profound question that's been challenging thinkers for centuries. Let's start in the 5th century BCE with Parmenides, the poet-philosopher from Elea, a Greek colony in southern Italy. In his work on nature, Parmenides drops a bombshell. Reality is one, eternal, unchanging, and indivisible. He calls this the One, and his argument is deceptively simple. What is, and what is not, cannot be. Think about that. If something exists, it can't stop existing, because non-existence is unthinkable. So the world we see, full of trees growing, people moving, cities rising and falling, is an illusion. For Parmenides, true reality is a single, continuous whole, grasped only through reason, not our senses. He splits this into two paths: the way of truth, where reason reveals this unchanging unity, and the way of opinion, where our senses trick us into seeing multiplicity and change. This isn't just abstract theorizing, it's a radical challenge to how people understood the cosmos. Now, why does this matter? Let's set the scene. Parmenides lived in Elea, a small city-state with an aristocratic bent, founded by refugees from Ionia. Politically, the 5th century was chaotic. Greek city-states were clashing, and the Persian Wars, like the battle at Marathon in 490 BCE, cast a long shadow. Parmenides' idea of an unchanging reality could appeal to elites craving stability in a world of shifting alliances and wars. Religiously, Greece was steeped in polytheism, with gods like Zeus and Apollo driving rituals and myths. Parmenides' poem starts with a mystical journey to a goddess, which nods to this religious culture, but his reliance on logic over sensory experience subtly pushes against traditional myths that celebrated a diverse, dynamic world. Culturally, this was a time of intellectual ferment. Thinkers like Thales and Heraclitus were proposing new explanations for the cosmos, and Parmenides' poetic form, written in epic hexameter, tied into a Greek love for artful expression, even as his logic broke new ground. Enter Melissus of Samos, Parmenides' philosophical heir, who takes this idea of the One and sharpens it. Melissus, a naval commander who led Samos in a revolt against Athens around 441 BCE, wasn't just a thinker, he was a man of action. He agrees with Parmenides that reality is one, eternal and unchanging, but he makes a key tweak. Being is infinite in both time and space. Parmenides had likened being to a finite sphere, possibly a metaphor for perfection. Melissus says no, if being had a boundary, that implies something beyond it, which would be non-being, and that's impossible. He also argues there's no void, no empty space, because being fills everything. This means motion is impossible, since there's nowhere to move to. Melissus' clear, logical prose makes the Eleatic case more systematic, like a lawyer closing loopholes in Parmenides' poetic vision. Let's ground this in Melissus's world. Samos was a thriving hub of trade and innovation, famous for feats like the Tunnel of Eupalinos, an early aqueduct. Politically, Melissus's revolt against Athens shows he was navigating a tense landscape, with Athens' empire flexing its muscle during the Golden Age. His philosophy, with its unchanging, infinite reality, might reflect a Samian defiance, a way to assert intellectual independence against Athenian dominance. Religiously, Melissus's prose strips away Parmenides' mystical imagery, aligning with a growing rationalism in places like Ionia, where thinkers were leaning on logic over divine stories. Culturally, his arguments fit into a Greek world buzzing with debate, where poets, playwrights, and philosophers were all wrestling with big questions. By denying the void, Melissus sets the stage for later thinkers like Democritus, who had to posit a void to explain motion and multiplicity. So how does this tie to the one and the many? The problem asks, how can reality be both one unified whole and a collection of many distinct things? Parmenides and Melissus don't reconcile these, they deny the many outright. For them, the diversity we see is an illusion, and only the one, grasped through reason, is real. This radical monism sets them apart from other thinkers. Take Heraclitus, who saw unity in the flux of change, with everything tied together by the Logos. Or later, Plato, who tried to balance the one and the many with his forms, an eternal unity behind the diverse world. Parmenides and Melissus say, forget the many. It's not real. That's a bold move, and it forces everyone after them to grapple with this tension. Let's fast forward to the medieval period, where the one and the many takes on a new life. Christian thinkers like Thomas Aquinas tackle it through theology. Aquinas, drawing on Aristotle, says, God is the ultimate one, the perfect source of all being. The many, plants, animals, humans, exist by participating in God's unity, each reflecting his perfection in a limited way. This preserves Parmenides' idea of a fundamental unity but allows for real multiplicity, unlike the Eleatics' outright denial. Islamic philosophers like Avicenna, influenced by Neoplatonism and thus indirectly by Parmenides, describe a single necessary being emanating a diverse cosmos. The medieval context is key. The Catholic Church dominated thought, and reconciling God's oneness with creation's diversity was a theological necessity. Parmenides and Melissus' focus on unity, filtered through Plato and Aristotle, gave these thinkers a framework to argue that the many depend on the one for existence. Now let's bring it to modern metaphysics. Baruch Spinoza in the 17th century channels a kind of Eleatic spirit with his pantheism. He says reality is one substance, God or nature, and everything else, the many, are just modes of that substance. It's like Parmenides' one with multiplicity demoted to mere appearances. Gottfried Leibniz, on the other hand, offers a different take with his monadology. Countless individual monads, each unique, reflect the universe's unity through a divine harmony. Today, philosophers still wrestle with this. Process philosophers like Alfred North Whitehead see reality as a dynamic interplay of events, balancing unity and diversity. Analytic thinkers debate universals. Do shared properties, the one, exist independently of individual things, the many? The Eleatics' radical stance that the many are illusory still haunts these discussions, pushing us to question what's real. Back to the ancient context, why does this matter? Politically, Parmenides and Melissus offered stability in a chaotic world. The Persian Wars, Athens' rise, Samos's rebellion, these were times of division. Their unchanging one was a kind of intellectual refuge, a way to find certainty amid conflict. Religiously, their focus on reason over senses challenged the polytheistic myths of Greece, where gods represented multiplicity. Parmenides' goddess and Melissus' logical prose hint at a shift toward rationalism, a precursor to secular thought. Culturally, they were part of a Greek explosion of ideas, poetry, drama, and philosophy, all asking what lies behind the world. Their monism was a defiant answer. Reality is one, no matter what your eyes tell you. This question of the one and the many isn't just ancient history. Today, we live in a world of fragmentation, social media, echo chambers, political divides, even virtual realities that blur what's real. Parmenides and Melissus challenge us to ask, is there something unified beneath it all? Their skepticism of the senses feels relevant when we're bombarded with information. Their trust in reason reminds us to dig deeper, to question appearances, and their legacy through Plato, Aquinas, Spinoza, and beyond shows how one idea can spark centuries of debate. Let's reflect on their impact. Parmenides' poem forced Plato to develop his forms, a way to explain how the many relate to the one. Aristotle had to wrestle with the Eleatics to build his metaphysics of substance. Medieval thinkers used their ideas to bridge God and creation. Modern philosophers like Heidegger returned to Parmenides, seeing his focus on being as a profound insight. Melissus, though less famous, made the Eleatic case airtight, influencing atomists like Democritus, who needed a void to counter his arguments. Together they didn't just pose the one and the many, they redefined how we approach reality itself. So what can we take away? The one and the many isn't just a philosophical puzzle, it's a way to think about unity and difference in our lives. Are we connected by something deeper, or are we just a collection of separate things? Parmenides and Melissus bet on the former, and their ideas, born in a world of political strife, religious myths, and cultural creativity, still push us to question what we see and seek what's true. That's the power of philosophy. It doesn't just explain the world, it changes how we live in it. That's all for this episode of The Philosophy Zone. We've traveled from ancient Eleia to modern metaphysics, all through the lens of the one and the many. If this sparked your curiosity, drop a comment on YouTube, share your thoughts, and let's keep exploring these big ideas. Next time, we'll dive into another philosophical gem, so stay tuned. Until then, keep questioning, keep thinking, and we'll see you in the next episode.